hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2022 One Sustainability Conference, our annual global sustainability event. We now have the pleasure to welcome Dominique Davison, the founding principal at Draw Architecture and Urban Design. She will be telling us more about creating a clear roadmap towards net zero buildings. Dominique, thank you very much for your presence, and I'm glad to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, James. Really happy to be here today. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in our firm is positive impact design, and how do we help move our industry towards net zero buildings, but even beyond that to positive impact. I'll be showing a little bit more about how we do that. So in the case study for this particular presentation, we thought it would be good to focus on schools because that's such a key area for the health of the future generations. And there's also quite a large percentage of buildings that are publicly owned, that are schools that have a great opportunity for improvement. So we've done a pretty in-depth analysis of the importance of sustainability in schools, and this was taken from a couple of studies that I note at the bottom of the slide here, and I'm happy to share those resources. But key information that we pulled from this is just the vast improvement that you can see in the behavior and the performance of the students and as well as staff when you do commit to creating high quality and sustainable spaces for them to be in. 90% increased skills, better behavior, improved community image, and ability to attract and retain teachers, which right now is especially important from what we're seeing, and reduced absenteeism, of course, is incredibly important. So these are all outcomes of the work. So how we think about sustainability is a very holistic way of addressing both the process as well as the outcomes. So when we think about a project, we really want to tailor it to the specific client and what matters to them. And so we go through a process that, a sustainability charrette, which would be required for any LEED kind of project, but we do this for every project. And then the outcome of that is that the client is able to sort of handpick and tailor their priorities in terms of sustainability, so that it's really something that is going to work for them long term. And because so much of the sustainability of a building isn't not just it's in the design, but it's how it's operated long term. So energy efficiency is obviously a key item that we discuss. Water efficiency is a very big deal in many parts of the country. In the Midwest, where we're located, it is as well. And then how do we, think about wellness in terms of how light, air quality, comfort, all of these kinds of things play into the design of the building. And then finally, the commissioning is a really big emphasis. And this is where we like to link arms with smart building technology partners to help clients to understand the long-term benefit of really understanding their own building, understanding how it operates, understanding, through IoT and dashboarding, where there might be leakages happening or a lack of efficient operational usage or, unhealthy conditions, especially. So when we were looking at wellness in schools, we did this for an entire school district. We came to the conclusion of these 6 areas being incredibly important for them. The health of the air they're breathing, right, especially post-COVID. How are we providing natural light and maximizing access to that for increased ability to concentrate and enjoy their day? Fitness, how are we, providing opportunities for them to move and make sure that their mind and their bodies are working in sync. Safety, of course, is an incredibly important feature. Comfort relates also to many aspects of, humidity levels, noise, all of the, and not just temperature. Mind is what we talk about when we think about, calming colors and textures. How do we integrate plants? How do we make sure that we're encouraging diversity? And then air, which we talked about already. So those are all kinds of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, right? If we do our jobs well, then we can achieve something related to the design that helps to encourage each of those 6 areas. What we found as an architecture firm is that it's just as important how we get there to the outcome. And that we really, as a part of our design process, needed to interrogate and think about how we design, how we bring the client along, when do we have these conversations, and found, of course, that as early as possible in the process, that the more success we had in terms of buy-in and being able to push the envelope and get the design further towards like a net zero potential target. And so we developed the sustainability workflow model that works very much in tangent with a LEED or other benchmarking process, but again, is our process for every project we do, whether or not it's a benchmarked project. So that's establishing those goals, like I mentioned in the previous slide, of what's important to them, right? And really listening. And then going through and making sure that we are establishing clear metrics and goals. And we use a few tools in order to do that. One is Planet Impact, which is some software that we developed in-house. And but it is available to the public as well to use on a project or a licensed basis, because we wanted to make it available to everyone. But it really starts to cross-reference the idea of the cost of the project early on with the potential benefits and the ROI of sustainable design. And, what's the lowest cost solution or the most efficient, logical solution to get to a net zero energy or net zero water kind of outcome. So having these sustainability workshops and holding our own team to task in terms of doing these assessments, making sure we're sharing them back with the client, having the conversation more than once is just very, very important to the success of any net zero project. So then when it comes to the process of what we did on this project specifically, analyzing, this was an existing school that we were doing, or the 10 different schools actually that we were doing an analysis for. You always need to start with the existing conditions and understanding what, the envelope, the systems, all of that are. And so we worked and created a baseline based on IES P&L prototype school energy modeling scorecard models. And then once we had that baseline, we were able to then accurately look at forecasting improved scenarios for them. And that's where we brought in the Planet Impact software. And we looked also at water efficiency as an important goal. And we decided that it would be most beneficial to give them like a good, better, best kind of scenario, so they could know, if they just were able to do a smaller investment now, what could they achieve? A larger investment would get them, further along. And then what is the final investment they would need to make to get to net zero? So here's an example of the existing conditions survey. We went to the schools, we measured, we documented. So here's just an example of a very typical kind of school that you might see. So I won't spend too much time on this. And then, we analyze things like the glazing ratios. Window to wall area ratios are very important in terms of energy use, daylight, the lighting internal to the building, wellness, and all of those factors that we talked about previously as being important criteria for us. And so this particular building, had a very, very low window to wall area ratio, which was, is challenging. So in reviewing the interior conditions, we also looked at things like, color temperature of lights, what kinds of lights did they have? Of course, we looked at the systems, and the kinds of materials that existed on the interior as well, and the quality of them. So here are just some more images of the existing building, and the toilets and things like that were in need of replacement already. So that was good. That's always a good time to catch one of these projects so that you can have a better, return on investment in terms of water efficient fixtures. So in terms of the outcome of the planet impact analysis, and we started first with this baseline calculation, and so we found 860,000 tons of carbon as part of their operational CO2 emissions, and in terms of water usage, about 680,000 gallons of water annually. And then when we looked at the good, better, best scenarios that I mentioned previously, these were the recommendations for this particular school. So if we just upgraded the HVAC, we could get to about a 20% efficiency, and that lowered the annual energy cost pretty significantly. But it was still at 120,000, and there was a payback that was, pretty quick and almost a no-brainer, right? 3.6 years. When we started to look at the exterior, if we increase glazing, if we improve daylighting, if we put in some better lighting, like solar harvesting systems and sensors, and look at shading where the shading is needed, better insulation, etc. There, we were able to reduce the total energy very significantly to 72%. And that reduced the energy costs even more, still had a very reasonable payback. And then, so once we'd done everything we could, we thought that was reasonable to the exterior envelope of the building, making the building as energy efficient as it can be and the systems as efficient as they can be. Then we look as the last resort to solar PV arrays, which in this particular climate do make sense where the school was located. And we were able to fill that gap of the final 28% in order to get to 100% net energy production, rather. So here's the analysis of the kinds of output that the Planet Impact software provides. And so it breaks it down by the different elements, right? One of the things was also just heat, setting occupation, the occupancy to make more sense in terms of also the thermostat settings. And we looked at, more efficient systems and how that all kind of accumulated to achieve the goals that we had. And this is the good option, right? And then here's the better option, showing all of those improvements to the exterior envelope, improving daylighting. So even though we're increasing window area, right, in order to account for that wellness component, helping the students to have, better attendance and more, better focus and all of that. So that kind of went in the opposite direction in terms of the efficiency. So everything below the line, right, is a reduction, and everything above the line is an increase. So you can see in the key to the left, just to clarify that green is energy and gray is cost. And then the dotted line is the cumulative over all of the elements as they're added up together. So the things that we did were increase the window area, have better glazing for all windows, the new as well as the existing. Much improved lighting systems. These the lights were not yet updated to LEDs or even the better efficiency fluorescence. HVAC. We went with a multi-zone VAV and with enthalpy, which provided much better efficiency. And then, of course, going from a gas to electric system is very important in order to achieve net zero. So that was key. And then the roof and wall insulation also were pretty significant. Then with the net zero, again, all of those same steps were taken, but we added the solar PV. And here, the total cost for that system in order to get to that net zero was about $500,000. There are grants available currently through the federal government for schools. So this is a very good time for schools to be making these kinds of improvements. And again, this just describes everything that we did in the kind of summary of all of the improvements and the payback. Also looking at heat island effect, that's a really important component of this, right? When we add the PV panels to the roof, it significantly helps the performance of the building too, given the climate. And we looked at water efficiency. So for this particular building, we were able to reduce the water usage by 275,000 gallons, very significant reduction, about 40 or 38% total. We did not do water collection or recovery at this time, but ideally that would be another component that we could look at and analyze, and Planet Impact does look at that component as well for how to get to net zero water usage. So we did things like, all fixtures to be water sense label fixtures, bathroom faucets, just adding aerators in order to go to 1 gallon per minute as opposed to the 2.2. These are pretty outdated toilets, so everything was still 1.6, if not more, gallons per flush. And we also, looked at all the other fixtures as well in order to lower the water usage. And all of this is calculated per the LEED standard for water efficiency. And then finally, our recommendations also for commissioning in terms of what additional steps can be taken. So we see net zero as really a 4-step process, right? It's how efficiently can we design it? How can we use the renewables then? But then how do we look at the operations? And then finally, the monitoring long-term in terms of smart buildings. How do we make sure that the client or the owner is able to very intelligently understand the mechanisms by which their building operates, and how they can then make intelligent decisions about how they might change how they operate the building. I think too often we don't have that kind of insight, that clarity of how our building is working until, a month later when we get that utility bill, and then it's already too late. For example, we had a toilet running in our own office, and we didn't find out about it for 28 days because it happened, right at the point of our utility bill changing over. And next thing you know, we had a $1,400 water bill due to a running toilet. And so for some of these commercial toilets, it can be pretty staggering, the amount of water waste that happens, or, a lot of it's pipes that just aren't operating correctly, that sort of thing. So basic commissioning in terms of just the HVAC, we've seen as much as a 16% savings over year over year. And, sometimes it's just because a setting wasn't set correctly. It's a very simple thing, but it can have a really big impact and avoid system failures. And then enhanced monitoring, that sort of smart building component where you're really monitoring how each element of your building is working. I mean, it can get down to the plug loads, or it can be a larger sort of system-wide approach. There's a lot of ways to do that. It just depends on what your project budget is, but you can see easily 25% savings on a building operational cost when it's used and monitored constantly. And then building envelope commissioning is the last one. So each of these have actually an excellent payback when they are being applied in a good way.
Well, Dominique, thank you very much for this most interesting presentation. I have a couple of questions, and in the Q&A, there is something here. The first one is environmental printing considered for banners, posters, and so on?
For our projects, we weren't so much looking at that. That wasn't a focus. We were looking more at the operational carbon impact. And so that would be more of maybe an embodied carbon question. But yeah, thanks for the question.
Okay. Then another one here. Question was, how long did the whole project take?
So I want to say it took about 5 months for us to analyze the buildings, create the baselines. That took a little longer than it could have, just because of access to the existing utility data. That just took some time to figure out. If the client has their existing utility data handy and ready to go and can share that with you, then that could go quite a bit quicker to create the baseline. So and then doing the analysis and having a third party kind of review and verify it, it took probably another few weeks. So overall, I think each building you could do in a month.
Right. And then the last question is, what was the openness for using solar, and was there any impact on the building structure?
Yeah, I think they're very open to the idea of solar. A lot of the sites that we looked at actually had the opportunity for a ground-mounted solar too, so the structure wasn't as much of an issue. And solar panels at this point are really there's a variety of different types, and some of them are very lightweight. So we haven't really had an issue ever where we could not put a solar panel on a roof.
Right. Now, one thing I found most interesting is that by improving the environment, you actually improve the skills of the students and perhaps interaction between students and teachers. Have you looked more deeply into that? What is it? I mean, there's so many schools around the world where the situation is what it is.
Yeah.
Not always terribly convenient or comfortable or anything like that. And how do you see your improvements actually affecting the spirit and skills and attitude of students mainly?
Yeah, well, maybe to the first question, I think about signage, that's an excellent way to bring in some information about what has been done, why it's been done. I know we've seen, I know SOM did a great project that was a net zero school, I think in New Jersey, and they included a lot of interpretive signage and had some data around, getting the students involved with the process, and having programs of I don't know if this was theirs, was another school actually, where they got the students involved with it, like a recycling competition, right? Who could recycle the most, and weighing the recycling and sort of looking at waste streams. So that's always a nice way to get the students involved. But absolutely, yeah, the education component of it, getting them excited and proud of their school, right? That they're taking these steps. It really helps to build confidence and interest in the wider world.
Yeah, that's most interesting. And we all know that younger people are even more concerned about what's happening to the environment than older people are. So this is something that could inspire them even more. This is I hadn't seen that aspect of improving the environment, of really helping the spirit and attitude of students. And I hope this will be possible in a maximum number of schools, because I mean, there is a cost. They probably need, you said there are sources of government support, but that may not be available everywhere. And eventually the cost is much lower for them, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, over the course of this entire, if everything that we recommended was implemented, and then, looking out 15 years, which is generally kind of the horizon that we look at for these kinds of improvements, because solar panels generally tend to, lose their efficiency around that mark, or a lot of the systems might need replacement around year 15. So that's as far as we take it. But if you do the math, it's like $6 million back in their pocket, which is really significant, especially when you're looking at paying, off these capital improvements with a loan. Then, it becomes net positive for them financially quite a bit sooner.
Yeah. All right, I'd love to continue, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. And Dominique, I want to thank you very much for joining the group and contributing so much to One Sustainability, and we look forward to further contact.
Thank you so much. Yes, appreciate you having me.
All right, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.